In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top tips for selecting sewing patterns for beginners, and this is for fashion sewing. So if you're ready to find out my top tips, then I'm ready. Let's go. Okay, so I focused on fashion sewing specifically because there are other ways to learn how to sew, your soft furnishing, totes, purses, that type of thing. But if you are focusing on fashion sewing, which is outfits, clothing, garments, that type of thing, then this is the video that you need. If we're meeting for the very first time, my name is Juliet Izo, and on this channel we love to work together to demystify the art of sewing. So you are most definitely welcome if this is your first time. So over here I have all these sewing patterns. They are not the only sewing patterns that I have, and they're not the only sewing patterns that are out on the market, but they are the ones that I just picked out from my stash just to demonstrate the key things that you need to focus on when you start picking out sewing patterns for making clothes. I am not sharing the best sewing patterns for beginners because every beginner is different. Everybody has their choice, their style, and you can't really prescribe a sewing pattern for every single person, which is the reason why I'm equipping you with the skills that you need to select any sewing pattern to suit your taste, your style, your body type, and that type of thing. So first things first, the first thing to do is have a look at the rating on the sewing pattern pack. Most sewing pattern companies will tell you who the sewing pattern is meant for, even though some people feel like it's okay to dive right into the deep end, and some people think it's good to start from baby steps and grow as you go. So here I have on this pattern, it says here the pattern is for confident beginners, and we've got this one here. I think this one's for beginners because even if the sewing pattern companies do not tell you on the pattern packet, you would find the rating on the website. So most websites would tell you who the sewing pattern is suited for, but that's a good way to start. On this one here, they've used sewing machines, and they've shaded in that this is for intermediate sewers. So it's really important to keep an eye on that. The next thing that I do that as well, is to have a look at the sketch. So the flat sketch on the sewing pattern. These sewing patterns come with sketches at the back, and these sketches also go on the websites. So if you have a look here, you'd see that the sketch shows you exactly what the pattern, what the garments will look like when it's all completed, which is the reason why I do recommend it. It would show you how many lines, how many seams you're going to get. It would also here's this one here. I have this very easy one for you to see. You can just have a look at this. Look, so looking at the trousers here, you can see that it has very few seams, very few seams, which means that it will be really easy to create. But if we go over to this one here, there's so many lines going on with this pattern, and a beginner wouldn't want to go for that one, which is the reason why I say it's very important to have a look at the flat sketch. The flat sketch will give you a rough idea of how the dress or garments, whatever it is you're going to be creating, how it would be constructed, and that would sort of ease you into the creation process and the selecting process before you even go ahead to purchase the sewing pattern. This next one is one of my favorites. It has to do with selecting the type of fabrics that you're going to be working with. We all know that different fabrics behave differently, and some of them are easier to work with and some of them aren't. And as a beginner, you want to focus on the fabric that you feel the most comfortable with. Some people go straight in with stretch fabrics or knit fabrics, and some people go with cotton, which is quite easy to manage. So my favorite tip is to make sure that you have a look at the fabric recommendations on the sewing pattern packet or on the website. So you would find this type of information at the back of the pattern packet if you are buying from an actual store, or on the website of the sewing pattern company. You would find the recommendations, all the different options, and you can then select the pattern that you're going to work with based on the fabric suggestions. Now we're going to talk about the next tip, and after this one we'll talk about the fit of the garments. So hit the like button and let's go on to it. You need to consider the closure of the sewing pattern that you're going to be working on. Now, closure, when we say closure, we mean things like buttons, zippers. We're talking you know, buckles, we're talking about eyelets, all different types of things that you could use to close a garment. Some fabrics don't have closures, so anyone that has no closure would be, I think, would be great for a beginner. So having a look at these now, you can see that if a person is completely new to sewing and they are not too confident with these types of buttons, then they probably want to stay away from this sewing pattern as a beginner. But then not all beginners are the same, because as a beginner I didn't stay away from anything. I went in for everything. So different beginners are different. So this one here has no closures. So as you can see, it has no closures. So you might want to, you know, gravitate towards patterns like this one here. I have this pattern here that has buttons as well and buttonholes. So it's really important to consider that. This one here has just the one closure, which is a side seam zip, and I really like this. But this is actually one of my favorite trouser sewing patterns. I think it was the very first trouser pattern that I ever made, this one by Sew Over It. And yeah, it's really important to consider how you're going to be closing up the garments when you finish creating it. Some people do not like working with zips, some people do not like working with buttons. Everyone's different, so really do consider the type of closure that you're going to be working with. And now to the one that I asked you to wait for, which is the fit. You have to consider the fit of the garments that you're going to be creating before you actually buy the sewing pattern. When I say fit, I mean the way the garment is actually going to fit on you. Loosely fitted garments are easier to construct, and they are less fussy when it comes to making sure things fit in the right way. I'm saying this because something like a kimono, you know, a kimono won't really need much fitting, if that makes sense. You know, things like trousers or pants will need a lot of fitting to make sure that the waist fits nicely, the hip, the thighs, all of that. A princess seam garment would need a lot of fitting. So I know these sound a bit alien to you, like princess seam, but you really need to have a look, which is the reason why I gave that very first tip. Have a look at the flat sketch, which would then give you an idea of how complex or easy the fit is going to be on that garment that you're going to be creating. And yeah, so that really is important. And I have some more tips and tricks when you are learning how to sew here in a playlist on the screen, and I hope to see you over at those videos. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and take care. All the very best. Bye.